Inflation, war, news, and uncertainty in the economy. Are you finding yourself worried about money, experiencing fear, financial stress, anxiety? Is it possible to live without financial worries? Today, we'll talk about financial literacy and moving beyond the typical money recommendations to feel financially empowered and resilient.
Welcome to the Enriched Nurse with your host, Dan Richmond. Enrich your personal finances, nursing career, and life.
It's April, and that means Fool's Day happened, and it's also Financial Literacy Month. But there is a lot more to money than just know-how. We have a lot of emotions and feelings about money. There's a lot of scary news and uncertainty these days, potentially any day if you know where to look, and this can compound what's typically the number one stressor for Americans, their finances. Feeling financial apathy, being unconcerned, can be an empowering state to be in, not having to worry about your money. Life has plenty of stress and obstacles without piling on financial worries. Financial literacy is having the knowledge and skills to manage money effectively. And most of us probably know more about money than we think, but it's the actual management part that can be tough because there's so much that just makes it difficult to manage money effectively. We always got some kind of barrier, but having quality routines, habits, and taking effective actions, that lets us be and feel effective with our money. Ultimately, a major goal of financial literacy should be to know how to eliminate financial stress and worry and replace it with confidence instead. But knowledge isn't enough because to enjoy a life without financial stress and worry, it really depends on how you use that knowledge. But also it's about how we understand and how we feel about money and how we can be more resilient with it when faced with financial challenges. For example, we all go through nursing school. We all get plenty of knowledge and skills to prepare for day one on the job. And we all know how challenging it is to actually put all that together, right, in the real world. We face all kinds of feelings, burnout, strange demands, and challenges in the actual job that make using the nursing knowledge and skills that we have a real challenge. And using them effectively is not easy. It can take years to really feel confident in that job. But of course, getting to a point where you can actually function as a nurse and at a higher level and have it be a sustainable career that you actually enjoy is way better than constantly feeling anxious, upset, worried, questioning your choices, right? And it's the same thing with money. You got to put in a little bit of time and energy to get more confident with it. And it feels so much better once you do that. And every nurse has the ability to thrive financially and confidently, especially with the right guidance and support, just like the outcome of your first nursing job. So we'll discuss the importance of financial literacy, well-being, and resilience in this episode, plus where you can focus your efforts to see impactful results in each area. Plus, I reveal the nurse's potential financial superpower, the secret to success. It's positive cash flow. I'll explain more, but first, let's talk about the latest nurse-specific financial trends. I mean, nurses are not immune to financial stress. If anything, most have plenty of it, and that's on top of the stress they have from their jobs, just life, and everything else. So according to the latest financial wellness study for nurses from Fidelity, and this is based on 400,000 nurses, so this is useful information and is specific to nurses. So let's break these down a little bit. Not surprisingly, as we all see every time we go to work, there's a lot more women than men, and the amount of men in nursing is actually decreasing. It's actually decreased from when I became a nurse 20 years ago. One interesting thing about some of the nursing demographics is Gen Z and millennials, so younger nurses, are starting to make up the majority of nurses. For a long time, it was the older generations who were making up the majority of nurses. So that's kind of interesting. And also, about 30% of nurses are nearing retirement. So 30% of the workforce. That's kind of crazy. But let's break down some of the three top things they highlighted in this study. things that can definitely help with financial stress and worry and feeling much better about your finances. Emergency savings. So a lack of emergency savings, having debt, taking hardship withdrawals from your 401k, these were all things that were impacting nurses. So a majority of nurses, over 50%, 56% to be exact, lack 3 months worth of emergency savings. A significant percentage tapped into their retirement plan specifically for a hardship withdrawal, and about 13% of nurses have a retirement loan, taking a loan from their retirement account, which can be for anything in a lot of plans, with an average outstanding loan amount of $13,000. Financial confidence. So this I thought was pretty interesting and really, not shocking based in what I see in my own experience, but just kind of shocking from a statistical standpoint. They found that only 12% of nurses are confident in their financial situation. They found 51% of nurses have credit card debt, and they actually carry a credit card balance from month to month, which means they're paying a lot of money in interest, which, I could see how that would make you not feel confident in your financial situation because credit card interest sucks. It's a nasty thing. And it is really expensive. It's really expensive kind of debt to have. And that also tells me that, with inflation being up like 30+% since COVID, and a lot of nurses' earnings not increasing with that, nurses are subject to the same kind of cost pressures that almost every other American are having right now, right? Their income's not keeping up with their expenses and buying power. And yeah, they're having to use credit card debt to supplement that and probably feeling like they're just barely getting by. They found top savings goals for nurses were to build up emergency savings, actually take a real vacation, and have the money to do home improvements. Interestingly, they found recently retired nurses only had 3.5 times their income saved compared to the recommended 10 times goal. And so let's say a nurse making $100,000. So this means they got about $350,000 saved up in retirement. And now that seems like a lot of money. And 10 times $100,000 in income is $1 million. Woohoo, you're a millionaire. But keep in mind, this isn't for the ability of like taking that $1 million and to go, buy a sports car. It's to supplement your Social Security income and replace your income from your job. And a lot of people are living a lot longer. And so the reason that 10 times goal, for a nurse, $100,000, having at least $1 million in retirement, is so they can actually fund a 20 to 30 year potential retirement. So only having 3.5 times, there's a huge risk for retired nurses, right? That they might have to return to work, or they're going to have a lower quality of life in retirement, or they're just going to be forced to spend a lot less money. It does not have to be that way. The other interesting thing about this study was around student debt. They found that 1 in 3 nurses have outstanding student debt, and it takes an average of 20 years to pay it off. And the average balance is about $47,000. I paid off most of my student loans within several months of graduating, the high interest ones. I think I had like almost all my student loans paid off completely, like a year outside of nursing school. I held on to some special subsidized ones with really low interest rates. But within 10 years of graduating, I had all of these loans. I had everything paid off. My wife and I both. Paid cash for a bachelor's degree. I cannot imagine having 20 years like dragging around student loan debt, even at a modest interest rate. That is a ton of money paid in interest. So that really sucks. It's no wonder with some of these kind of metrics that only 12% of nurses are feeling confident in their situation. There's all kinds of things we can do, and Financial Literacy Month is April, and it's great that there is a lot of focus. There's been a lot of focus over the last several years, especially on improving financial literacy, and nurses are pretty well known as a group of not having a high level of financial literacy. We're busy, we have a stressful job, we make pretty good money, right? Depending on where you work, not everybody feels like they're making good money. We make decent money, have the ability to potentially make more. So there's definitely the potential for nurses to do pretty well. But yeah, we don't get a financial education. Money's kind of a funny thing in nursing. It's kind of a taboo subject. It's always been like that. I've been a nurse now like 20 years, and there's always been this kind of funny thing like, if you're focused on the money, or if you expect to actually get paid well for your work or get raises that keep up with inflation, you're somehow greedy, or it's about the patient. No, it's about providing quality patient care and not at your own expense, and keeping up with the market and hospitals paying their fair share. Because I guarantee you, when you're working for a lot less than your market value, the hospitals aren't extending that cost savings to the patients and their healthcare costs. Now, healthcare costs keep going up too. So real important for nurses to be focused on financial literacy and money, get over this whole self-sacrifice attitude we tend to have within nursing, and the taboo. It's important to be talking about money. And part of that too is there's some interesting things about nursing. Male nurses tend to make more than female nurses. Like I said, we make up a tiny chunk of the workforce, yet somehow we're managing to get paid higher. So same kind of gender pay gap you see throughout the U.S. economy. And then the other thing is, especially in a non-union workplace where the pay scales aren't standardized and people start talking to each other about how much they're making, hospitals, there's a funny thing. Like what I've noticed over the years is what employers will tend to do is, so sure, they might have a set pay scale, and once you get your foot in the door and you start working someplace, they're going to put you on that pay scale, and then there'll be like kind of a structured pay raise, and they're going to say like there's no potential to negotiate that. But what happens at the entry point when you take the job is they got to attract people. So they might bump people up on that pay scale or hire people. And so I've seen this over the years, mostly with non-union employees and workplaces, but even within the union, hospitals or any healthcare employer really will put new hires higher up on the pay scale. So then when you have your employees start talking to each other, they're like, wait a second, I've been here 20 years and I'm only making like $2 or $3 an hour more than you. You find that the pay scales are all over the place. If you negotiated a higher raise when you started, obviously you're going to do a lot better than the nurse who got started way lower or told they couldn't be started higher on the pay scale, or who knows, any number of reasons. But what I found is when nurses start talking to each other about money and how much they're actually earning, they can be pretty shocked at how much some nurses are making more than them and how much less other nurses are potentially making below them too. It's pretty important to be talking about these things. And, it's not good for nursing, the profession, and for patient care to have nurses struggling financially, being stressed out, more subject to burnout, wanting to leave the profession. You working for less than your fair market value or less than you deserve does not improve patient care. It arguably makes it worse. It makes nurses more likely to get exploited or be inclined to have to work extra shifts. And it really kind of allows the hospitals to get away with, and not just hospital. I work at a hospital, so I'm always talking about hospitals. But any employer, really, it makes it easier for them to not address the staffing issues and have you working more for less. It's a huge problem. So talking about money is a good thing. And financial literacy is a good place to start. And the reason financial literacy is so important is because in the financial space, you've got all these people who aren't getting paid the same way nurses get paid. We tend to get paid by the hour, right? Maybe we're salaried if we're in administration, but for the most part, I think most nurses tend to get paid by the hour. And we certainly don't get commissions. Like, unless we're working for a drug company or something, we're not getting commissions based on what a patient decides or what our clients decide to do, right? But in the financial space, your lenders, your advisors, all kinds of people, right, in the financial space, insurance salesmen, they tend to be on a commission model where, depending on the product that you choose, the financial product you choose, they're going to get a commission. And they can certainly get things that are much better deal for them and maybe not as good a deal for you. So financial literacy can save you a lot of money. When you're not getting ripped off on loans, when you're not getting ripped off in insurance, when you're not getting ripped off on your investments, that's more money that you get to keep. That means less time you have to spend working. That means more potential to actually have that 10 times retirement amount saved. It means the ability to retire early instead of having to work longer as a nurse. It really means more financial confidence and less potential stress for you, and the ability to have more financial resilience. So in the financial space, there's not really the equivalent of a nurse advocate. Like when I got a patient who's stressed out or not knowledgeable about something, I'm going to provide them my expertise and my best recommendation. And it's not going to really matter to me financially. It's not going to really impact me how they make their decision. They ultimately have the decision, but I'm going to advocate for them to make the best decision possible based on what I know about their personal circumstance. And I'm certainly not going to recommend a worse tack so I can get paid more money. I mean, that just doesn't happen. It does happen in a lot of these other financial spaces. So understand financial conflicts of interest and have financial literacy. More financial knowledge is, you don't always put it to work, because the other thing, and we see this, and this is why advocacy is so important in the healthcare space, is because we have these patients, right? And they're vulnerable, they're sick, there's a lot going on, it's stressful, it's hard to make a decision. And so they really need somebody to help them and support them through making a good decision, because it can be so overwhelming and it can be so difficult to cope when you're sick and you're having a horrible situation and you're like in the hospital, or you got family, there's family drama and stress and loved ones and all these things. All these noises, it's confusing, you're not getting enough sleep. It can be hard to think rationally. And so that advocacy is important, and it really doesn't exist in the financial space. And a lot of money decisions tend to be emotional rather than rational. And so everybody has two ways. Your brain works in two ways. There's two ways of thinking. It's known as system 1, system 2. Basically, your reflexive brain and your reflective brain. And it's a lot more work to constantly be activating your reflective brain and analyzing things and considering knowledge, looking at the bigger picture, and being more critical in your thinking. It's a lot easier for your brain to just kind of quickly make a decision and not even activate that other part of your brain that uses more time and energy, but also makes more thoughtful analysis. And in the financial space, companies are masters of trying to get you to make quick, emotional decisions rather than actually running the numbers. So with financial literacy, even though there's been all this work, there's all these resources, all this education out there, people are still struggling with their knowledge, but they're also struggling with making decisions that actually improve their financial state and actually improve their lives. So be aware of that. If nothing else, if no other takeaway, I mean, a lot of us, I think, have more financial knowledge than we realize, but putting that financial knowledge to use can be difficult. Running the numbers, recognizing, hey, I need to sleep on this decision, listening to your gut, those are ways that can activate that part of your brain, the rational side, to use that financial knowledge more effectively and avoid a pitfall like making an emotional, quick decision that winds up costing you a lot more money. Okay, so let's talk about financial resilience, because like I said, there's wars going on. It seems like there's always some kind of financial crisis or always some kind of thing happening in the world, right? That really just makes life stressful. And it's terrible, some of the things that are going on in the world. The world's a really big place. And then like in your own personal life, I'm sure you've got all kinds of things going on too. And so it can be helpful to think of things as, I have my circle of control. I've got things that I can really make an impact on. I've got my circle of influence. That's a wider area. It's things I don't have control over, but I can certainly influence them or impact them a little bit depending on how I'm operating or choosing to get involved. And then there's the circle of concern. And we're constantly bombarded in the circle of concern with all of these world events, all of these potential crises, just the news, local news, social media, family drama. Workplaces always have all these things they want you focused on. There's just so much. There can be so much, right, that is concerning and that we should be concerned with, but it's pretty far outside our control. Your money and your finances are very much within your control. And depending on how you make decisions with your money, depending on the knowledge you have about money, and depending on how long you go without neglecting that and strengthening that, can determine how much control you have. So that's a good place to be. One place I hate to be in, and I haven't been in for like 20 years, is not having like any money, not having the ability to withstand a big shock. The one that gets thrown out is majority of people can't afford a $2,000 expense. And that can include a lot of nurses. A lot of nurses are living paycheck to paycheck. They're pretty much running out of money. And if they don't get that paycheck, their bills don't get paid, they don't have a cash buffer. They don't have that emergency savings that we talked about. And they want that, but they're struggling to get that. It's within your control to have that. And financial resilience is looking at a little bit bigger picture. It's, yes, understanding financial literacy and having some basic knowledge that helps you manage money more effectively, but it's also protecting your assets, protecting it from inflation, protecting it from, getting wiped out and really risky investment. It's avoiding taking on way too much debt where you're having this huge strain on your finances. And it's about helping protect against risk with insurance. And nurses have access to a lot of benefits and a lot of potential ways to mitigate risk. That's important, and that's a good place for us to be in. But that doesn't mean it's easy, and nothing gives you more freedom and control like just having a large cash buffer, like having a lot of savings. And the one thing that kind of bothers me is, there's all this uncertainty in the world, right? And right now we're going through yet another crisis where the cost of food, oil, all these things are going up. Gas prices are going up. There's a lot of uncertainty and worry and wondering what's going to happen, wondering who to believe, wondering how bad things could get. Because there's always a group pretty far out there saying things are going to not recover, like things are going to break. It's the end of the world as we know it. You know what I mean? Crises can get blown out of proportion. And that's one thing. In my lifetime, despite all the crises and wars and problems I've seen, we tend to always get through. But individually, as a whole, as a society, we do seem to overcome and get through these challenges. And, the last really big one was COVID. It was tough, right? But we did eventually get through it. We made it past. And we had sticker shock, we had inflation, still repercussions from COVID back in 2020. It's crazy. It's 6 years ago now. It's just crazy. But still seeing some of the effects of that. And then right now, there's even more uncertainty. There's more scary news. And so looking at what's within my level of control, because even though as a whole, we tend to move through these things, it rarely is evenly. A lot of people still struggle, get left behind, and don't have that luxury of feeling financially confident, not having financial stress. Not everybody gets impacted. Like I'm not getting impacted by gas going up. And high gas prices don't scare me. I went to nursing school on Kauai. I was paying $6-7 a gallon for gas back in 2005, 2006, and I quit my job at the height of the Great Recession. 2010, people are losing their homes. My wife and I, we quit our jobs, took time off. It's been over 20 years since I didn't have that cash cushion and that buffer and that feeling of financial vulnerability. And it's a really lame place to be in. It's not since I was like 18 that I really didn't have the ability to withstand financial shocks. I became a CNA at age 17. That gave me a leg up, the ability to make a little more money than minimum wage, have flexibility, get a job anywhere. I was waiting to get into nursing school, became a massage therapist. It gave me the ability to increase my income even further. Nurses, once you become a nurse, right? You get the ability to get a job anywhere and potentially increase your income a lot. What we don't tend to do is increase our cash flow as our income goes up. And that is the secret, which I will get into a little bit more. Because when you say, hey, I want emergency savings, or, hey, I want to improve my financial state, you got to have positive cash flow. And I'll talk about that more later. But financial resiliency, there's a lot of things that we can do using insurances effectively, ensuring that savings is getting some interest on it, keep it in a high yield savings account so it's at least keeping up with inflation and not getting eroded over time. And then also avoiding taking on debt and paying debt down. And if we're having credit card debt and paying high interest rates, really focusing on eliminating that debt as quickly as possible. All those things can make you so much more financially resilient to where you don't have to suffer and be nearly as stressed out when these types of uncertainty, shocks, economic surprises happen. And really, it shouldn't be surprises because, like I said, throughout my lifetime, there's been a bunch of these pretty big concerning events. And thankfully, I've been in a place where I haven't really had to change things much or deal with it. The last time I really had to make some changes in the way I was spending money, and not very much, was post-COVID. When we're in contract negotiations, our employer was really dragging their feet on giving us essentially cost of living increases. Our pay was like 30% behind. It was crazy. Everything's more expensive. had to make some changes, because 30% pay cut's pretty big. But because I had so much cash flow, positive cash flow, it really didn't impact my lifestyle that much. I had options. So I'll talk more about that here in a minute. But the other benefit, of course, before the crisis hits or the problem hits, right? Of course, it would be nice to have that 3 to 6 months of emergency savings, right? But it's not easy to get that. And that's why it's elusive for a lot of nurses, I think, and just people in general. And usually you hear this kind of crap advice that's like, start small, save like $100 a month. Come on. If your necessary expenses for like 3 or 6 months or like $4,000 a month, that's just to like pay your bills, your mortgage, like essential food and stuff, your car payment and all those things. $100 ain't going to cut it. You need $12,000 to $24,000, and $100 a month, you're going to have $1,200 at the end of the year. So saying like, oh, you need to get 3 to 6 months stat when your pay hasn't kept up with inflation, when prices are already like going way up. It really sucks. It's a really crappy place to be in. So financial resiliency is really important. And it comes down to focusing on a few different areas. Having assets that you can draw on when an emergency happens. And often that's emergency savings, like having some kind of savings buffer, right? Having some resources you can draw from. Yeah, having money in a 401k that you can borrow for hardship withdrawal if needed, or take a loan from. Debt management, having a manageable amount of debt, having appropriate insurances in place. So if something bad happens, you're not at risk of bankruptcy or just eating it. You've got medical insurance, you've got homeowners insurance, you've got car insurance, you've got liability insurance. So you're not looking at catastrophic financial consequences from a major risk that actually unfortunately happens to you. And then, of course, having the knowledge and skills to just make sound decisions with money, financial literacy. So those are the 4 financial resilience pillars. All right, so now let's talk about financial well-being. There's a lot more to money than just having knowledge. And a lot of what I think prevents us from taking action on those financial resilience pillars and actually using our literacy, our financial knowledge effectively, is how we think and feel about money. And so financial well-being is a little bit different because it's about having control of your finances now and later. It's about being able to withstand financial shocks and surprises, be able to roll with it. It's about actually being able to meet your financial goals and having the freedom, the financial freedom to make choices that allow you to live and enjoy life. So the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau came up with a questionnaire to measure financial well-being. And at the enrichednurse.com, we actually have a nurse-specific questionnaire. I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's enrichednurse.com/nurse-financial-well-being-assessment/ kind of a long link. So it is in the show notes. I scored at 86, which is the highest score for my age group. Do you know what your financial well-being score is? Most nurses don't. And most nurses don't score 86 or even a 68, which would be the point at which you're considered in the highest financial well-being group. So the average for Americans is 48, which is pretty tough. That's a little on the low side. And we don't really know the average for nurses because no one's tracking it. But it's probably close to the average for Americans based on everything I've seen. And I really want to change that we don't know what nurse well-being is. You can get your score right now and help us better understand nurse financial well-being. And also yourself, you can get your score. It takes less than a minute. Your answers are completely anonymous. We really want to help nurses with high-quality financial literacy and empowerment resources, and we also want to make sure that their struggles are well understood and trended over time. We all know the importance of assessment and evidence-based practice. The questions have been validated by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and by understanding nurse financial well-being and trending it over time, we can actually promote more effective solutions for nurses. So get your score now at enrichednurse.com. The link is in the show notes. Again, it's completely anonymous. There's no obligation. You'll get a more comprehensive understanding of how you are feeling about your personal finances and situations. It's interesting how powerful the brain is when it comes to money. And the financial well-being questionnaire really looks at more than just how much money you have. It's not asking you financial questions. It's asking you more like, how do you feel? How does this statement apply to you? Like, do you feel like you have enough money left over at the end of the month? Do you feel like you're able to be generous and make gifts? how are your finances impacting you and how you feel about them on a day-to-day basis? It's about, are you living the life that you actually desire and actually want to live? And the thing about improving your financial well-being is then you can have that financial confidence. You can actually have more money. You can understand when you have enough money. You can be more financially resilient. And you can live well now and in the future. All right, so let's talk about cash flow and some actions to take. I know there's a lot of uncertainty. And, before you can get 3 to 6 months, a big cash buffer, like actual cash savings, you got to improve your cash flow. And so what cash flow is the difference between your expenses and your income. If your expenses are way too high and it's higher than your income, then you got negative cash flow. You're probably carrying a credit card balance. You're slowly taking on debt. Maybe you're quickly taking on debt. You're spending more than you earn, which is a really lousy financial place to be in. Not going to inspire confidence and definitely going to be causing you financial stress. If your expenses are less than your income, then you're cash flow positive. And so, a lot of historical financial literacy or just, personal finance recommendations or expert advice is to really focus on just like decreasing your expenses, right? Like, let's lower your expenses, budget, cut things, go through, sweat the small stuff. And what a lot of people find is it's really hard to do that. It's hard to sustain it. It kind of sucks. And it doesn't necessarily improve your cash flow a lot. I think it's smarter to focus on the bigger stuff and look at ways to keep your major expenses lower. So that way you're automatically just not eating a huge chunk of your income. And the other thing is increasing your income using differentials, negotiating higher pay raises, talking with other nurses about where they're at on the pay scale. If you're unionized, negotiating collectively higher pay raises and enforcing your contract and making sure you're getting paid correctly. So at some point, to improve your cash flow, because you got to remember, inflation's always eroding your buying power. The cost of things is pretty much always going up. Some years it's really high. Some years it stays about the same. If you're basically breaking even, like your expenses are right at your income every month, then something like a war comes along and all of a sudden gas prices shoot up and grocery prices go up even more. You have unforeseen expenses. Yeah, you're taking on debt because there's no room in your budget. There's no area to increase your spending or absorb that shock. Yeah, sure, you can go pick up extra shifts, but you know what? We're already stressed, exhausted. I mean, when I'm scared or having fear or something stressful, I don't really want to go work more and pick up extra shifts to offset it. And then you get taxed more and everything. Anyways, you wind up not making as much as you thought, and then you're spending for convenience and all these other things. Looking at your cash flow objectively, and it's as simple as assess your finances, figure out the expenses. Is my income not keeping up? Has my income not been keeping up with inflation? So you got to decide, should I focus on decreasing expenses? Should I increase income? Prevention here is key, but it's really that simple when it comes down to cash flow. So I have had positive cash flow for over 20 years. So basically, since I graduated as a nurse, my income significantly increased once I became a nurse, even just working part-time as a nurse. And my potential ability to earn more money increased even higher than that. And so prioritizing positive cash flow, making sure I wasn't allowing my expenses, lifestyle creep, lifestyle inflation, making sure I didn't go buy a brand new car, upgrade a bunch of stuff in my lifestyle, get a bigger place, spend more money on eating out, buy fancier stuff, taking on a bunch of debt. Because I didn't do that, I had a huge chunk of cash flow. And because I directed a lot of that to paying off high interest student loan debt, credit card debt that I'd taken on while I was in, going to school and finishing up nursing school, because I wiped all that out, my cash flow went up even higher. And that allowed me to keep working part-time for a long time. It allowed me to save up to buy real estate. It allowed me to live well in the present while investing quite a lot more than the average nurse, even through the Great Recession. It allowed my wife and I to save up a bunch of money to take several months off to travel. It allowed us to save up for 20% down payment on a house. I mean, positive cash flow is really important, and nurses can have positive cash flow, but you got to actually prioritize it. And so, again, like the big areas I think are much more important here. I mean, you can blow money on small stuff like drinking lattes and whatnot if you want, especially if you're keeping major expenses lower. So that's not overbuying on a house, not getting yourself a mortgage that eats up like 50% of your income. That's a lot of money. Avoiding debt, like not paying credit card interest, paying off your credit card in full every month, driving an older car, shopping your insurance every now and then, choosing the highest deductible for the lowest premium, not eating out at restaurants constantly, keeping your food costs down, actually making more food, having leftovers, things like that. Investing and using tax-advantaged accounts like a 401k, health savings account, flexible spending accounts, etc., things like that, which will allow you to save and invest more money while paying less in income taxes. Having positive cash flow is so important, and it's going to be really hard to save up a bunch of money, for an emergency fund if your cash flow is breaking even, if you don't have much positive cash flow. And then as, life happens, inflation goes up, there's always unforeseen expenses, right? If that's constantly eating up your cash flow, if you're paying way too much in interest on debt, that's eating up even more of your cash flow. Even working extra shifts isn't enough to cut it. I mean, you really got to be strategic, and you got to focus in on some of those heavy hitting areas. And credit card debt is always going to be a heavy hitting area that you can prioritize and boost cash flow. The other thing is automating as much as possible, because you can avoid a lot of the behavioral pitfalls. If you're just kind of blindly working a ton and you have your money go into an account and you're distracted and you're busy, it's just really easy to spend a lot of money. You'll spend less if you set up like a direct deposit from your paycheck to a separate savings account. And then if you use that money to pay off debt to increase your cash flow even more, you'll start feeling a lot more confident and a lot better about money. And once you start looking at your expenses and you're thinking, hey, does this align with my goals? Do I really want to spend this much money on this thing? Do I really want to have to work extra shifts to cover all this stuff? Once you start using that financial literacy knowledge to actually reduce expenses, renegotiate things, increase your cash flow even more, then saving for goals becomes much easier. But even before then, I mean, it's like right now, like say I had $0 in savings, I tend to have $3,000 to $4,000 in positive cash flow. And I've had that for, like almost 2 decades. That gives me like $4,000 a month. That's like $50,000 a year, right? So having that kind of cushion, 30% inflation happens, all these things. Sure, I might need to adjust some investments to offset that. But because I have so much money going into savings and investments on any given month, I've got a huge buffer where I can just absorb those things alone without even having to touch those savings or investments. I got a $2,000 expense. I can handle that, right? In any given month. I can handle quite a few because I really focused on maintaining that positive cash flow. And that doesn't mean, life sucks and I'm like budgeting meticulously. I mean, I barely am even like tracking. I mean, when you can get yourself to a place where you don't have to spend a lot of time. And that's the thing. I hear a lot of nurses will be like, oh, I don't have time. I don't like thinking about money. I don't like thinking about financial stuff. It's too much effort. It is so much more effort to have anxiety, to be stressed out about money and finances, and to be working a ton. As a nurse, 12-hour shifts. Come on. Like committing several days of your week to more than 12 hours at a facility that's stressful and tough and is like rough on the body, that is way more work than spending a few hours developing sound money habits and figuring this stuff out. And then over the long run, it's really, really powerful. But having that cash flow, focusing on increasing your cash flow, and the simplest ways to do that are looking at, hey, can I reduce some of my major expenses? Getting rid of a car, driving an older car, insurance alone. I can add a lot of money. It's crazy how expensive new cars are these days. Don't buy new cars. And if you have one, eat it temporarily, get rid of it, get an older car, decrease your transportation costs. It's easier to focus on areas like that, eating less at restaurants. You can free up a lot of cash flow right there. and then attacking debt and eliminating it, that gives you even more cash flow. It feels so much better than the alternative, which is getting squeezed every time something bad happens in the economy that causes prices to go up, stressing about money, living paycheck to paycheck, or just not feeling confident. When you have a buffer in your monthly cash flow, that alone will make you feel much more confident. If you really want to get your financial house in order, then check out our ANCC-accredited courses at enrichednurse.com. You can start for free and get up to 5 contact hours. If you're ready to stop screwing around and get your financial house in order, then check out our multi-week comprehensive ANCC-accredited Financial Wellbeing for Nurses Bootcamp. You'll learn everything you need for financial literacy and so much more. We'll walk you through the step-by-step process of analyzing, understanding your financial situation, and then how to put together a holistic financial plan. We go even further, though. I share all of my best strategies and tactics for living well in the present while preparing for the future with actionable insights on investing, cash flow optimization, reducing taxes, avoiding getting ripped off by advisors, debt elimination, and so much more. Here's what nurses have said about it. When you were talking about increase in income, you were throwing out gold. Nurse Vivian said, "I'm an older nurse toward the end of my career, and I wish this course had been available earlier in my career." Delaney said, "Dan offers a realistic and straightforward approach while proving that financial independence is attainable." Nick says, "This is a must-have course for anyone who wants to maximize savings with minimal effort." What will you gain from this life-changing program? Enroll today and get paid to learn using your employer funds and hours for our 15 ANCC Contact Hour program. The link is in the show notes. All right, so I hope you enjoyed today's show. So again, it's Financial Literacy Month. It's always a good idea to learn more about finances and getting smarter with your money, but we can make finances so much more complicated than they need to be. At its simplest, just improving your cash flow, getting a positive monthly cash flow gives you so many more options just right there. And asking yourself, will this purchase or will this expenditure, is that going to increase my cash flow or is it going to decrease it? That can help you make better decisions. And the big one there is like buying a new car and financing it. Do you really want like $700 monthly payment for a vehicle to keep having to drive to the hospital, or your employer even more? Making better decisions with your money, being more resilient, will make you feel more confident. So maintaining a buffer that lets you live well now and prepare for the future is very empowering. When you focus on increasing that positive cash flow, it becomes so much easier to start saving up, paying cash for things, withstanding, monthly shocks or annoying expenses that inevitably happen. And also it'll let you actually make progress, real progress on saving up 3 to 6 months of emergency savings. So use your nursing funds and hours to learn more about financial literacy. You can actually get paid to learn. There's ANCC-accredited financial wellness courses. Get in the habit of questioning financial experts and then run the numbers yourself. So even just getting financial literacy before you're making a big purchase, like you're going in, you're getting a car, you're looking at a house, or you're looking at a loan, or you're looking at getting a home equity line of credit or something, or you're trying to think, how am I going to get out of credit card debt? And you're looking at potential programs to help with that, like major financial decisions. Remember, in the financial space, a lot of people are making a lot of money and they try to make decisions emotional, right? So you use that part of your brain that makes it easy to make the decision. And often that results in a big commission, a sales thing, and it doesn't deliver you the financial results that you're necessarily looking for, or that makes you feel better about money, makes you have a higher level of financial well-being, makes you more resilient, and makes you feel more confident with your money. So run the numbers, activate that reflective part of your brain before making big decisions. Listen to that gut feeling. You can have all the financial knowledge in the world, but if you're not willing to use it when it matters, take a step back, recognize, okay, I might be getting emotional about this. Oh, this is a big decision. I should really run the numbers. I literally had a friend who said he was ready to buy a trailer, and he was going to buy it. And then he was like, well, let me see that cover sheet. He ran the numbers right there and was like, oh my God, I cannot believe how much that's going to cost me in interest. And he nixed the deal right there. Emotions can get the better of us when it comes to our finances. So think about your goals and desires, consider if your money is actually supporting them, and then look for ways to reduce expenses, especially in those big areas. That's going to be like housing costs, transportation costs, food costs, taxes, interest. Look for ways to boost your incomes. That would be like using differentials like certification, maybe working every weekend. So avoid behavioral and emotional pitfalls and automate as much as possible. So if your finances are unique, right, and that we can automate away a lot of emotional behavioral decisions, right, that are contrary to making good financial moves and feeling more confident. You can automate your savings, automate your investments, automate paying off debt. You can set up a separate savings account that's different from your checking or your spending account to avoid just spending that money. You can automate paying off your credit card in full every month. When you no longer feel like you're scraping by, you've got positive cash flow, you can really start making confident moves with your money to build up savings, get even more positive cash flow, or just improve the quality of your life. All right, I hope you enjoyed today's show. I know it's tough out there. It's Financial Literacy Month. Take a little time to focus on your finances. If you would review the show, we would greatly appreciate it. All right, take care.